This video is going to explain to you what a plot diagram is. For every story we read, we can diagram the actions in the story on a plot diagram. While you watch the movie, you're going to be taking notes to the right of the video in the text box that is provided for you. This is what a plot diagram looks like. And it starts on the left and it moves all the way to the right. The lines show the action and how the action starts off pretty relaxed, and then things kind of heat up until eventually we get to a climax where the conflict of the story is dealt with, and then things begin to kind of fall into place, and then there is a resolution of some kind as the story ends. Exposition is the first piece of the plot diagram. I like to call the exposition the stuff you need to know what you need to know. It is the introduction information like setting and characters. If you don't know where or when the story takes place, or who or what the story is about, you're never going to be able to understand the story. So that's exposition. The next term is inciting incident. The inciting incident is what happens that makes the rest of the story happen, that sets the action of the story in motion. So this would be some sort of moment toward the very beginning of a story where the conflict is set into motion so that the story can move along. All along the left side of what looks like a mountain on the plot diagram is the rising action, and I put rising action there 3 times. Sometimes there are 3 major events that lead up to a climax. In a book, there are many. In a short story, there are fewer. It depends on the length of the story. But the rising action are the events leading up to the climax. The climax can be described in a few different ways. It can be the high point of action. It can be the turning point in the story. It can be where the conflict is confronted. Well, it's always where the conflict is confronted. The thing is, sometimes stories have really big climaxes, like a big fight scene or a big battle scene or a war scene. Or sometimes in a story where it's just about people, it's where maybe they have a conversation to resolve their differences. So it depends on the nature of the story where the climax happens. The climax, or how the climax happens, where the climax happens, is going to be towards the end. You've been watching a movie in the movie theater before, right? And you're like, okay, where's this story going? And then all of a sudden you get to a high point, and then the last maybe 15 minutes of the movie, it kind of resolves itself and ends. That's the climax, where the conflict that's been building up all story gets finally confronted, and the story turns and begins to kind of settle down. And that's where the falling action comes in. The falling action are all of the events after the climax, and there really may not be very many events after the climax. And it's where the loose ends are tied up. You know, everybody kind of settles down. If there is a big battle scene, you know, maybe the hero comes home, or things begin to settle down. And as we read more stories, you're actually going to feel it where the falling action starts to happen. All of that kind of anxiety and suspense begins to settle down till finally we have a resolution, and the resolution is the end of the story. Conflicts are all fixed. In a fairy tale, we say, and they lived happily ever after. So those are the pieces of a plot diagram, and we're going to be reading a lot of stories the next couple of weeks, and after every story we're going to make a plot diagram so that you can see how the events in the stories work out onto this fun little thing that sometimes it's called a witch's hat, sometimes it's called a mountain, and that once you know the different pieces of it, the easier your life will be.